3 days after Derek Broaddus closed on his dream home, a letter arrived in the mailbox. It said the house had been watched by his family for decades. It mentioned the family's minivan parked in the driveway. It mentioned their 3 children. It said, "It is time for them to come and fill the house with young blood." It was signed, The Watcher. Derek and his wife Maria never spent a single night in that house. Westfield, New Jersey, is the kind of town that appears on lists. Best places to raise a family, safest cities in America, top school districts, the kind of town where people move to feel safe. 657 Boulevard is a 6-bedroom house built in 1905 in the Dutch colonial style. Ornate fireplaces, hardwood floors, spacious rooms on a quiet, leafy street. Derek and Maria Broaddus paid $1.3 million for it in June 2014. Derek was a senior vice president at an insurance firm in Manhattan. Maria had grown up in Westfield. This house was close to her parents, close to her childhood. It was everything they had worked toward. They had 3 children, 5, 8, and 10 years old. They were planning renovations before moving the family in. 3 days after closing the sale, Derek checked the mailbox. The envelope was addressed to the new owner. Inside was a typed letter, no return address. Derek read it alone in the house that evening. The letter began as a welcome to the neighborhood. Then it shifted. 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, it read. And as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. The writer called himself The Watcher. He said his grandfather had watched the house. His father had watched the house. Now it was his turn. He knew details that no stranger should have known. He mentioned the family's minivan, correctly identifying the vehicle parked in the driveway. He mentioned the renovations Derek had been doing, the contractors, the work being done inside. He had been watching closely enough to know the specifics, and then came the line that Derek later said he could not get out of his head. Will the young blood play in the basement, or are they too afraid to go down there alone? Derek called the police that same evening. He also called the previous owners, a couple named John and Andrea Woods, who had lived at 657 Boulevard for 23 years. What they told him made everything worse. The Woods had received a letter too, just days before they moved out. A letter from the Watcher, thanking them for taking care of the house. They had thought it was strange. They had thrown it away. They had not mentioned it when they sold the property. The Watcher had been there before the Broadduses arrived. He had been watching for years. The police opened an investigation. Derek and Maria stopped bringing their children to the house. The renovations were put on hold. And then the second letter arrived. "Where have you gone to?" it asked. 657 Boulevard is missing you. The Watcher had noticed their absence. He was still watching. The letter asked a question that investigators found particularly disturbing. Have you found all the secrets it holds yet? Secrets, plural. No one knew what that meant. A third letter came weeks later. This one was different in tone, angrier, more direct. It referred to the Broaddus children by the ages Derek had once mentioned in a public context. 5, 8, and 10. The Watcher knew. 657 Boulevard is hungry for its young blood, the letter said. Come and play. Come and fill it with energy you were meant to bring. Derek and Maria made a decision that would cost them enormously. They would not move in. They would not bring their children into that house. Not until the Watcher was identified. The Westfield Police Department investigated. They focused initially on the family next door, the Langfords. Michael Langford, the neighbor, had been diagnosed with schizophrenia. He had lived next to 657 Boulevard for years. He knew the house. Investigators questioned him. His family denied any involvement. Then forensic results came back from the envelopes. DNA had been recovered from saliva used to seal one of the letters. The DNA suggested the sender was a woman. It did not match anyone in the Langford household. It did not match anyone in the police database. The Broadduses hired private investigators. They hired former FBI agents. No one could identify the Watcher. Meanwhile, Derek attempted to get permission from the town to demolish the house and build two smaller properties on the land, trying to cut his losses and recoup some of the $1.3 million. The town planning board rejected the application. The community was split. Some neighbors were sympathetic, others were skeptical, suggesting the letters might be a hoax orchestrated by the Broadduses themselves to get out of the purchase. The skepticism in the community made everything worse. Derek and Maria were trapped. They couldn't move in, they couldn't sell easily, they couldn't demolish, and now their own neighbors doubted them. Then, on Christmas Eve 2017, 3 years after the nightmare began, something happened that pointed investigators in a new direction. Several families in the neighborhood received hand-delivered envelopes. The letters inside targeted people who had been publicly critical of the Broaddus family. The Watcher was still out there. Still watching, not just 657 Boulevard, the whole neighborhood. The financial damage was catastrophic. The Broadduses had paid $1.3 million for a house they could not live in, could not easily sell, and could not demolish. The renovation costs had already been spent. They rented the house out for a period, hoping distance from the situation would help. A fourth letter arrived, addressed this time to the renters, and a fifth addressed directly to Derek and Maria. To the vile and spiteful Derek and his wench of a wife Maria, it read, "You wonder who the Watcher is? Turn around, idiots." The Watcher was taunting them now. In 2019, 5 years after buying the house, the Broadduses sold 657 Boulevard for $959,000, a loss of nearly $400,000, plus renovation costs, plus legal fees, plus years of private investigators and former FBI agents who found nothing. The new owners moved in. No letters have been publicly reported since. Whether the Watcher stopped or simply changed targets, no one knows, because the Watcher was never identified. DNA in the database, no match. Hundreds of hours of investigation, no arrest. The case is officially unsolved. 657 Boulevard sits on its quiet, leafy street in Westfield, New Jersey. It looks like any other house on the block, built in 1905. Beautiful bones, 6 bedrooms, and somewhere in that neighborhood, or somewhere watching from far away, the Watcher knows exactly what it looks like inside.